Hey guys, and welcome back to the mudstudsskullcaps podcast. I'm Robin.
And I'm Kelsey, and in today's episode, we are going to dive into the different eventing levels and what to expect at each. We're going to discuss the recent changes to the star system, the new level that was added, what the heck are MERS and how do you get them, and what is prompting these changes.
Okay, which level do you want to start breaking down first? Because
let's give the folks an intro. I know I introed it once already, but where do you want to start? No, I'm just kidding.
I was just going to start with I have no idea I didn't understand half these levels until I actually started reading into them this week. I was so just confused on everything.
So I didn't learn until this week. I'm sorry, I've evented for many years. I know what all the beginner, novice, prelim, I understand all of those levels all the way through advanced. I didn't realize until this week that the star levels are the FEI levels. I had no idea what they were. It was never anything I was ever going to compete in, or at least at that point in my life. And I've just always been so confused. What's the difference between CIC and CCI? I don't understand any of this. And it wasn't until this week that I finally figured it out. So I'm sorry.
Well, I think we all kind of knew at least what the old star system was. We knew what it correlated with. We knew that one star correlated with prelim, 2-star correlated with intermediate. But we never
knew why though. I never knew what this is. The star system never made any sense to me because I was well, we already have that level. Why do we need 2 of that level? How are these not the same thing? I now get it. I now understand. Because for whatever reason, eventing decided to be confusing. Right? Because in dressage, when you get to the international levels or FEI, it's a clean break, right? National levels are 4th and below, and then above that is the FEI levels. I get that. That's a clean break. Get it. But in eventing, it's this weird zigzag where you can go back and forth and you can be competing above or below. I don't know. It was just weird. I get it now. I'm sorry. I'm this slow, this late to the game.
Right. And then they went and made the big change in January 2019 to making it 5 stars. And I was like, whoa, I am lost. I don't know, where did the extra star come from? What is now the new star? I don't get it.
I swear when I first heard about it, the star system, I swear people were saying that the new level was going between 1-star and 2-star levels. So they were breaking those apart, but that's not what happened. It's a new 1 star is its new
modified level,
lower down level. That's what I was trying to say. But I swear it was something that was supposed to be in the middle originally when I heard about it. So I was definitely super confused, but I get it now.
Because when they were changing it though, all they were really telling people, or is what I got it broken down and how I heard about it really, was that the 4-star just became 5-star. So that made sense, right? 4-star, now I just know it's 5-star. And so all the way down, 2-star was now 3-star. 3-star was now 4-star. They just changed what they were calling it. And I was but what's the new 1-star? I don't understand because there wasn't that before. So what did you want to start with breaking down on this?
Well, I guess the first thing I had on my notes was the national levels and also short format versus long format. Do we want to touch on that real quick or just jump into the national levels?
We can touch a little bit on short format versus long format.
Sure. So I've always known the difference between those two.
Atta girl.
That one I did know. So for most of you guys who are aware, we currently are competing in the short format of eventing. This change became official after the 2004 Olympics, where they removed phases A, B, and C, which are our roads and tracks and steeple phase, from cross country, and we were left with just the cross country, the phase D, which is the short format. So before that, you would have the long format, which I have gotten a chance to compete at.
So have I.
It's really fun. I always really enjoyed it. It was, I don't know if I loved it as a exchange for warm up, because I like warming up, in an arena and doing it that way. But I did love, doing roads and tracks and just getting out there and trotting and just riding your horse for a little bit longer. I think that's what I really enjoyed, because you put so much pressure on yourself to get organized and get to the show and have everything, all the training, all of this for, 10 minutes or 5 minutes.
I always liked the roads and track part because I felt I got my nervous little jitters out of the way right there from the get-go, because you had enough time that you're nervous going out of the start box on just starting with your little trot or canter, however you want to start it. And then the nervousness and the jitters would go away. And by then, you would be coming back, having a little rest break before you took off onto cross country.
Yeah, that's absolutely, like, that's a good point. I think I constantly remember just panicking about my boots because, like, that was the thing. Everyone was like, you've got to make sure you get off before steeplechase and then you check that your boots are okay. And I was like, oh my God. So I was just, like, remember panicking constantly about my horse's boots. My horse's boots are fine. I don't know why that was, like, the thing. But, like, I remember hearing stories about, like, you've got to check that their shoes are still on because if their shoes come off, you need, like, could you get your shoe back on in time? I was like, really, these are like people's concerns. And so that was like what I was panicking about the entire time was, oh my God, his boots are gonna fall off. I need to like check his boots. I need to make sure I have enough time to check his boots before before the steeplechase phase and then before phase D. Like, I just remember that being my panic, but everything was fine. So I do know that there are still a few places that have the space to do the long format, but that's not like a traditional level in eventing anymore. But there are a couple. I think there's a training long format and a prelim long format level, quote unquote level you can compete at in some of shows, but most of the shows don't have the facilities anymore or the ability to organize that long format. So what we are seeing now today is that short format. And that really came from the International Olympic Committee wanting to basically eliminate that cost and all the land requirements, because to find a place that can host a long format event is very challenging, especially when you're going to foreign countries that are already spending a lot of money and resources. You know, the eventing is usually not held in like the same city, right? It's usually held somewhere else or nearby because they need a much bigger space. And it's just, I get why the long format has gone away. I do, like, it's sad because it's really fun, but it also kind of makes sense that we just don't have, even at the national level, just don't have the space for it.
Right. And so I know in terms of levels and eventing, we always had the terms CIC and CCI tossed around. And those for a long time, I never really understood. We were always competing CCI, but I didn't understand what CIC was until a few years ago.
Yeah, I figured out what they were this week.
I'm so proud.
I tried to figure out what they were like a couple years ago, and I do distinctly remember reading the Wikipedia page. And I didn't get it, so I gave up. But I do now that they renamed them. I understand what they are. That one is the short format and one is the long format, but they're like not long format, short. They were long format, short format, traditional sense, and now they've like reorganized to a new short format and a new long format.
Right. So I didn't even understand what CCI meant or what was that acronym? What did that stand for? And so what I found, I didn't realize that until this morning. But I found out CCI stands for is Concourse Complete International.
And then the other one is Concourse International Combined, which is unnecessary, in my opinion. But thanks.
Yeah, but originally when they started breaking down the courses and started having that division between no longer having roads and track and it was only cross country, CCI was the Concourse Complete International. It was the one that had kind of that full roads and track, full endurance phase on top of the cross country until that was phased out. But then they still had a longer cross country course and they had sometimes more jumping obstacles. Whereas the CIC, which is now known as the CCI short, is the shorter format where it was only cross country. The cross country course itself was less distance to cover, which meant less time, and they would have typically 4 to 5 less obstacles or jumping efforts on the course.
Correct. And the distance is like a difference of like half, right? This is a difference of like 4,000 meters or 7,000 meters if you're looking at the new short and the new long. So it is quite a distance with a lot more galloping in between the fences and not so technical and constant, because it's still roughly the same as like 40 to 45 obstacles at these upper levels. And so that's a big difference if it's on 4,000 meters versus 7,000 meters. Like that course length is a big change.
Yes, that it is.
So I don't know what the 1-star is, but I think the 2-star is now a short. So it's going to have that reduced course length, where the 3 and 4-star can be either format. You could choose to do a short course or a long course for the 3 and 4-star, and then the 5-star is that long format.
So the new 1-star level, what I was able to find or what I read, it's not specified if it's a long or short, and so that is up to the determination of the facility or the event that's putting it on. And so it can be either or.
Gotcha.
I know there was 2 events here in the States that are going to run the modified level I think one was Virginia Horse Trials, and then I can't remember what the other one was. I think it was also over here on the East Coast. And it didn't specify which option they had chose. They're going short or long, but I think it's up to the venue.
Well, since we've started talking about the new level, should we just start from beginner novice and work our way up?
Yeah.
So beginner novice, that is going to be your first introduction at the national level. So that's like your first recognized level. There are like technically levels below beginner novice, such as hopeful and grasshopper. I don't know if there's anything else down there.
There's like tadpole.
Really? There's a tadpole? That's really cute.
I think so, yeah. I think they just do poles.
Oh, that's adorable. Oh, I guess because grasshopper's a foot. Oh, because hopeful's 2 feet, grasshopper's a foot, and then tadpole wouldn't be a foot. That's cute.
Yeah,
that's
it's
cute.
adorable.
So yeah, beginner novice would be the first level that you could do at a recognized show or at the national level. And that jump height is 2 feet, 7 inches, because for whatever reason, eventers don't like the 2.6. Like, why did we have to do that? Why did we have to add an extra inch? Like,
I don't know.
Whatever. Like, okay, we're cool. We jumped 2.7, not 2.6, but okay. And then, so your courses are going to have about 14 to 18 obstacles for cross country, and you're riding about 300 to 350 meters per minute, which is like an average canter, I would say. That's not a very fast canter by any means. I'd say it's pretty average. And then this is going to be like training level dressage. So you're going to be doing, circles, straight lines. It's going to be a pretty simple dressage pattern that you're going to be riding.
Yes, and it has the black numbers on yellow backgrounds, and then it is just a little bit under the 90 centimeters. So people that aren't from the USA, their typical jump classifications, you have the it's like the 0.9 meters or 90 centimeters.
Yeah, that checks out. Yeah, that makes sense. But it's also like, why can't we all just have the same levels? I like get so confused when I'm trying to read about I'm listening to stuff about competing in Australia and England, and it's like, I don't understand.
That's how they feel listening to us, though, because we're the weird ones out. We're over here thinking we're special, measuring in feet and inches, and they're over here like, why 2.7? I don't understand even what 2.7 looks like. We're all just idiots.
I know. We all have to be unique and create our own levels, because we can't all just be like the same. But it is really,
we're just the funky bunch across the pond.
I apologize as an American for our levels, and I hope you guys, as non-Americans, apologize for your levels, because I don't. Someday, once I finally figure out the U.S. levels, someday I'll try to figure out the other levels. But it is really annoying because they use like letters. I think in England it's like, maybe it's not. I feel like it's letters. I feel like someone uses letters.
It's okay. I could kind of break down in meters for the people. Well, I got up to prelim broken down into meters, so some people can understand. And I can probably guess at what intermediate is, but
I appreciate that. But so for beginner novice, this is really like how you introduce your horse to eventing. This is how you introduce young riders or green riders to eventing. This is really just like dipping your toes in the eventing pond and trying to figure out if this is something you even like or want to proceed with. But this, like for beginner novice, this should be a really like pressure-free level. Like your horse should go very easily around a beginner novice course. This shouldn't be something that is stressful. This should be something that is really enjoyable. And actually, on that note, I did hear a really good point this week that we shouldn't be scared to compete at the level we're competing. Eventing is not a scary sport. If you're scared to go at this, whatever level you've selected,
yes,
you're probably not ready for that level. You should be out there enjoying it. Even if you're going advanced or prelim or whatever, like you should be enjoying it and not be white knuckled, terrified to go around cross country. Like, that's not good. That means you're probably overfaced. So beginner novice is even like more so. This is just really relaxed sort of setting for you and your horse, whether it's a green horse you're introducing or a green rider you're introducing. Okay, so the next level is novice. These jumps are 211, which is what in meters?
It's still roughly around the 90 centimeter mark. This is one I think might be ever so slightly over, like by an inch over 90 centimeters, but
no, it would still be under because 3 feet isn't 3 feet a meter.
Yeah, 90 centimeters is not a meter. 100 centimeters is a meter.
Okay, I don't know.
I think novice is 90 centimeters.
Okay, and beginner novice is just below.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, I believe whatever you tell me. I I do not have a converter with me, so I believe you. So at this level, you're still doing training level dressage. Your courses are a little bit longer, a little bit more complicated, but still really straightforward and really inviting courses. You're now going about 350 to 400 meters per minute, which is like, that's a good solid canter. Like, you're not galloping by any means, but you're not bebopping around that course. You've got a little bit more like oomph in your giddy up. Okay, that's a technical term, by the way. But like 400 meters is a little bit, it's been a long time since I paced myself and worked on pacing, but 400 meters there's a little bit more. And I guess it depends on your horse. Some horses 400 is easy. Some horses 400 is pushing it. Again, novice is really about going around that cross-country course and being in a really good, consistent rhythm. And every jump you're doing should sort of just flow naturally as you're riding it. There shouldn't be, the questions that are on a novice cross-country course should be fairly straightforward, should be really inviting, and they should not be challenging you or your horse. It should be a smooth, rhythmical ride, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. I smell where you're stepping.
Yeah, and I think that should hold steady for the dressage and for the show jumping as well when you're going novice. Just your focus should be relaxation and rhythm as you're riding novice. In your dressage test, relaxation and rhythm. In your show jumping course, relaxation and rhythm. These questions that you're being presented with should not be so technical that you are really having to ride that horse to get the job done.
Just another small note is that novice, when you're going around cross country looking at those jumps, is marked with black numbers on white backgrounds.
So the next level that we offer is training level, which is jump heights of 3-3. And I'm not doing the brush fence jump heights because I couldn't remember all of those. Sorry, guys. But I know that like your brush jumps can typically be like another 5 inches taller. The idea is a horse jumps through the brush. I know most horses don't get that, but some of them do. This is your last sort of lower level, but I don't know now what that means with modified. Is modified a lower level? Is modified a higher level? I don't know.
Nope. I got you on that one.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. But so your speeds are 420 to 470 at training level, and you have about 24 obstacles on cross country, and you're starting to do first level dressage. So stuff is starting to become a little bit more complicated. To get a 420 to 470, you're not going to be full out at 470 the entire time. This means you're going to have to be adjusting along the course, which means you're going to have to start packaging your horse up in places. There's going to be places where we're now really, having to introduce contact and a bit of a connection with our horse, not only in the dressage arena, but also going cross country. Training is still an elementary level. It's still a lower level. So you're going to things aren't as technical as they will, they'll get more technical as we go up the levels. But with training, it's sort of testing that water. Like, can we maintain a rhythm? Can we maintain what we had at novice level? And now can we start to incorporate some of those upper level questions? And how does a horse handle them? So like you're going to start to see things like tricaners and bigger ditches,
coffin.
Maybe I think you can coffin. Can you see a Berlin wall at training level? I think they might.
Yes.
Okay. So these are more technical jumps, more quote scary jumps for your horse. So the questions are getting harder at training level, and your show jumping is also getting harder, where you're now going to be able to do triples in training, a triple combination, which is a collection question almost. Going through that phase, that question in show jumping, you do have to package that horse up to get him through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then training is the one that has the white numbers on black backgrounds, and training is comparable. Training can be compared to a meter course.
Okay.
So it's the same as a meter.
Yeah, a meter is 39 inches.
Yeah.
There, I remember to think. So yeah, it's the same. I always think a meter's 36, but it's not 36. It's 39. Like about. I don't think it's perfectly.
Yeah, it's right in there.
So the next level is our brand new modified level. Your jump height is 3.5. Your speed is going to be 490 meters per minute with 22 to 28 jump obstacles. And dressage is still going to be happening in the smaller arena. I did not find an assigned dressage test or any confirmation of like what level it would be, but looking at some of the movements that were expected from modified, it seemed almost like first level movements happening in a small arena. So I'm not sure what's up with that.
I was a little confused with the modified because the way it's presented is that it's the level right in between training and prelim. However, training dressage is around first level and prelim is dabbling between first and second, yet everything listed modified as first and training level, which didn't make sense. Like I think it's around first, just in a small arena.
Yeah, and that's what I was confused about, definitely, because I didn't see.
It's like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, how do you go? You can't go back down unless you're reorganizing what training level is, which I don't remember training level dressage being like, it didn't seem, I don't know, like unproportionate. It felt like it fit. I just remember the dressage tests. I didn't feel worried about them. They seemed proportionate to what we were doing cross-country wise and stadium wise. So there's not a ton of information, honestly, about modified because this is a new level since it went into effect in 2019. I don't know. Like you mentioned, there's only 2 events that have looked at holding it.
Yeah.
So obviously I have not ridden modified level, but I like this. Like I like that there's now a level between training and prelim because that gap between training and prelim felt so huge. As someone who like struggled to get through that gap on 2 different horses, that level it's such a big gap. And I like the idea that because there was modified fits, even if you're looking at how you increase the height, because training was 3.3 and prelim was 3.7. Every other level increased by 2 inches except for prelim for whatever reason. So I like that modified's going to be there. I hope, and this will have to be something that we see how it works out, but I like that this level, I'm hoping this level will provide a smoother transition from training level to prelim. That's what I'm really hoping for. And that we can see. I think it will. Yeah, because for me and my horse, Dublin, 3.6 was like the max of where things were easy for us. We could do 3.6 courses and we could get around them comfortably. I know prelim is 1 inch bigger than 3.6, but for whatever reason, that jump, the width, the additional width, the additional width in stadium was really her big challenge. Was a huge challenge for us, even though it's 1 extra inch. So I do love the fact that modified is just a smidge smaller, but I think that would have given us a lot more confidence as we tried to get to prelim.
And prelim asks more complicated questions of the horse and rider. You have a lot more trickier combinations.
Yeah, and that's the thing with like training level is you're going to have like maybe 1 or 2 complicated questions on course. You know, depending if it's a course at the end of the year versus the beginning of the year. Obviously, there's some differences. I don't know, like that gap seemed so big. But the reason that they decided to add this modified level is because this is now the new 1-star level as well. So the international 1-star. And this is a level for children and ponies in developing nations. That's why it was created.
Yes. It's a way for them to get on the international level or on the international playing field without having to do the massive jump up to prelim that they couldn't necessarily be able to achieve. Especially, I know Dubai in particular. I've watched a YouTuber, Eddie's Gun. She was over in Dubai, and their eventing only went up to training level, our version of training level. And so they never could get on the international playing field or even get recognized because they just didn't offer that size. They didn't have the facilities and abilities to provide these larger courses. And so this modified level will allow countries like that to start participating more and get their name out there on the international field.
I mean, that's really interesting, and that's funny. I've been researching Dubai the last couple days for a totally different reason. So that's funny. I just have so many thoughts and feelings about that. Like, okay, yes, we've made this a 1-star level. Yes, now it will be easier for people to get on the international scene. But what is really the advantage of being on the international scene a little bit earlier if you still don't have the facilities to continue to grow? Is this just a way to get...
I don't know.
Right? Like if you're still capped at the same level, essentially, then what's the next? Really the goal of this? Is there funding involved now that you're internationally ranked on that scene? Is there funding to get you things? Like, is that what this is about? I'm
Maybe.
not sure.
I don't know. And so we'll have to finish talking about the levels here first before we go down this discussion. But part of what these changes, this whole switching from their 4-star levels over to 5-star, creating this new modified level, is so we get more countries and diversity here in eventing. So you have more countries being represented. But it doesn't make sense because you still only have a set number of these higher level courses of even 4-star, and now the new 5-star, you only have so many of these events. And your 5-stars, you have 6, maybe 7 now if Fairhill gets their game together. And those are
Fairhill's a 5. Fairhill's going to be a 5. They just haven't competed yet.
They're trying for a 5. I don't consider them it yet because they haven't had their first show there. One.
Yeah, sure.
So we have 3 here in the States, but over in Europe, you have Lemulin in Germany, you have, Pau in France, and then you have Badminton in Burley, and then you have Australia, which I know, not Europe, that's Australia, but it's harder for these countries like Dubai to participate in unless they're like outsourcing the riders.
Yeah, and I mean, we can talk about that more in a minute, but I agree, but also like, I just don't know what the 1-star level is going to do what it's set out to do. Because the big thing with that transition between training and prelim is it does weed out those that are truly lower level horses and those that are truly upper level horses. And to me, is modified just going to be, is it truly going to be preparing you better for the upper levels? Or is it just squeezing out one more level of a tapped out horse? Because that is something I have definitely seen a lot with prelim. People trying to make that move up to prelim as their horse is tapped out. They really can't be doing prelim. They are really struggling to get around the course. So they were never going to make it to the upper levels. That wasn't ever an option. So is this extra level, is it just one more chance for those horses that are tapped out? Or is it truly setting people up for the upper levels?
I think some will use it to truly set themselves up. However, I still think you're going to see those tapped out horses at prelim because this level is called modified. These riders that are pushing their tapped out horses are going to want to keep going on and be able to say they did prelim anyways.
Right, and that's the those horses that were truly going to be successful at the upper levels, that jump between training and prelim, it didn't matter. This level seems more like it's accommodating riders like me who are never going to be successful at the upper levels with my horse. Therefore, I don't need this. I do need this because if I wanted to compete a little bit longer on my tapped out horse, because I was struggling to make that jump to prelim, despite I tried and I competed in like a couple derbies doing it, or those couple combined tests doing prelim, but I couldn't make it on the recognized shows going prelim. So I didn't need modified. This level didn't matter because I wasn't ever going to use it the way it's designed. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. It just hasn't had enough years in effect to see if it's doing anything.
Yeah, and that will definitely be nice to see if that changes over time. And, it makes me wonder, was there a reason that change or that gap between training and prelim was so big? Was that done on purpose? Were they trying to do something with that gap? Or was that just an accident?
I don't know. I have to do more reading to figure that out.
Yes, a little bit more research. So as mentioned, the next level is prelim. So that's going to be a jump height of 3.7. And prelim is seen as like the first upper level or the first like real level. This is also going to be equivalent to our 2-star events.
But let's put real in quotation marks, like little finger quotations, because I think all these are real levels. And we need to get rid of the stigma that says prelim is the first actual step or the first upper level.
Okay, fair enough. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
And I think part of that comes from, for so long, prelim was, because that was the 1-star. Like, there truly was this huge break. And I'm thinking that break may have been on purpose. Now, the more I think about it, I think that was done on purpose. So, yes, prelim is the next level. It's a 2-star level. You're doing first level dressage. And I realized I wrote nothing down about how many jumps and how fast you go. But you're going to be going.
You want the numbers?
Okay, cool.
So, prelim, the distance is about 2,200 to 3,120 meters. Your jumping efforts you have 22 to 30. I don't have the speed. It's
520.
And then for show jumping, your height is still 3.7 with 11 to 13 jumps, and the speed is about 350 meters per minute.
I think we're looking at the same page in the rule book.
I think we've been reading the same website this entire time, because some of the things you said, I'm like, I definitely read that.
We were using Jessica Duffy, her U.S. eventing article, What the Star. Definitely relied on that, as well as Walk the Course of the New FEI Eventing Star System by Julian McPeak, which is a beautiful graphic to start the article. Really appreciated. That is actually how I finally figured this all out, is with a picture. You're welcome. And then I've also been relying a lot on both the USEA rulebook as well as the FEI rulebook. So those are our sources for this episode. Check them out if you want to confirm what we've been telling you.
Yeah, and then prelim is the white numbering on green backgrounds, and it is the equivalent to 1.10 meters.
So prelim, this is where things get more challenging. Trying to use some politically correct language there. It starts to get a little bit more challenging, where both in dressage, in eventing, I guess in all three, dressage, eventing, I meant cross country. Dressage, cross country, and stadium, you are now going to be riding your horse a lot more packaged. There's going to be a lot more moments where you have to pull that horse together, ask for a little bit of collection, even though it's still first level with some second level movements in dressage. And second level is where we truly start to see collection. That idea of really having a more supple horse, a more straight horse, a horse that has progressed up the training pyramid, is going to reflect in all three phases, and you really are now actively riding your horse around the course. This is the complete a 180 from novice level. You've done a 180 from novice level and are now riding your horse around the course. And this is the last level, in my opinion, where you should be spending a lot of time on a packer. I know there are intermediate and advanced packers. I think this is the time where it's really great to spend some time on a packer, get really comfortable, and then spend some time on a green horse to really show you are riding and you've got this, not just the horse. Yes, so intermediate jump height of 3.9. You have 34 obstacles on course, or about that, and you are going about 550 miles per hour, and you are solidly...
Miles per hour or meters per minute?
Oh my god, you'd be going so fast! Zoom! Meters per minute, guys. Oh my gosh, you'd be going as fast as a plane. That would be insane. I'm so sorry.
It's a little bit of dangerous riding right there.
That is insane, guys. You should slow down. You are going to get some serious flags on course. The ring steward is going to definitely come over. A ring steward, someone's going to come and talk to you about dangerous riding. That's for sure. So again, 550 is still, meters per minute is still pretty unattainable speed. Like, you're not going to do that constantly. This is definitely a give and take. Slow and gallop, because you're going to have a lot more questions on cross country where you're really going to have to package up that horse, get that coffin canter, get straight for your, there's so many bending lines on cross country at this point.
So intermediate is the white numbering on red backgrounds, and it is the equivalent to 1.20 meters.
Okay, so the next level is advanced. This is the last level that is offered. There's nothing above this, but this is 4 and 5 star are both advanced?
No, 4 star is what comes after intermediate. So 4 star is the equivalent to intermediate on the international scale.
And 3 star? What's 3 star then?
3 star is now prelim.
No, 2 stars prelim. I think intermediate must be 3 and 4 star.
Well, okay, advanced used to be 4. No, 5 stars is its whole own thing. Never mind, we're fools.
No, it's 4 and 5. It's 4. Advanced is 4 and 5.
Okay,
I wrote it down. It's 4 and 5.
Whew, that almost took a dangerous turn.
Okay, so advanced level is the next level, and it's the final of the national levels, and it's equivalent to 4 and 5 star level events. So jump height is 3.11. You're going to be going 570 miles per hour with how many obstacles on course? See, this is
You said miles per hour again.
Oh, damn it. Okay, one more time from the top. Your horses will be going 570 meters per minute on cross country. Again, that's not a sustained speed. It's back and forth. And then we'll be doing third level dressage. So half passes, flying changes, canter serpentines, turns on the haunches. I think also at like 5 star level, they'll be backing and rein back, things like that at the higher levels in dressage. And this is This is it, folks. This is the pinnacle. Is that pinnacle? The like...
Yeah, it's the top dog.
It is. This is where I think probably... How many people do you think actually want to ride advanced? Like...
I do.
Okay.
So
I'm scared too. I'm scared too. Because I honestly don't think everyone's trying to get to advanced. I think you have a lot of people that are absolutely want to get there, but I also think you have a lot of amateurs, you have a lot of, hobby riders that just, this is not where we're shooting. We are, I think I'd be happy with a good prelim ride.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's only really a handful of people that are wanting to compete at advanced and wanting to even move on to the 4 and 5 star levels.
Exactly. So I remember, this is a little off topic, but it's along the same lines. I remember we would always, in Pony Club, every year they would ask us, like, what are your goals? You had to go through that whole, like, goal planning. What do you want to do for this year? What are your long-term goals? And, they wanted to know, where are you trying to get with your riding? Like, where is the peak of your riding? And most kids obviously wrote they wanted to ride in the Olympics. I always said I wanted to organize the Olympics. That was always my goal. I was like, I don't want to ride. I just want to organize it. I want to be the person in charge of the Olympics.
Oh my gosh, that was never my goal.
Right? I don't know why I wanted to organize the Olympics. I'm sorry.
Do you still want to organize the Olympics?
I would love to be in a position where my voice mattered. Not necessarily in the Olympics, but to the sport as a whole. I would love to be in a position where my voice mattered.
I would agree with that. That's actually very well said. What a rounded answer that was.
Do you have anything else to offer for advanced before we move on?
The only thing I had to add with advanced is that advanced is going to be the white lettering on blue backgrounds, and it is the equivalent of 1.25 meters. And now we can move into how some of these levels, they have requirements. They have mandatory requirements of how you can even become eligible for them, and they even have requirements, at least a 5-star does, for what what the event venue has to offer to those riding at that level.
Oh, I did not look that part up. I just looked up the eligibility requirements, which is what MERS stands for, that competitors had to complete in order to move on to the next level. So as far as I can tell, these just apply to the stars, not necessarily the prelim advance if you're competing at the national level. Is that correct? Is that what you were getting as well?
So prelim, to move up to prelim, I believe you have to be qualified and become eligible for it. However, that is merely just an age requirement. I believe you have to be 14 years old or older, and then you have to have a certain number of clear jumping rounds for your cross country and show jumping to move on. And I think that carries on to both intermediate and advanced, where you have to have a certain number of clear rounds before you're allowed to move on. But I think that's the extent of what their limitations or like eligibility requirements are.
Okay, so I definitely just went to the FEI rulebook to figure out what the minimum eligibility requirements are. So these are what pertains to the FEI levels that I'm about to talk about, and not what pertains to the national levels, because yes, I know there's age requirements, which I do think are a little low. And I do think you're right. I know I talked about this previously. So for FEI levels, for the dressage levels, your dressage test, you cannot have more than 45 penalty points, which translates to a 55%. For cross country, you have to have a clear round. You can activate one frangible device, but otherwise no like refusal penalties or falling off, things like that. And then optimum time, you can be no more than 75 seconds outside of optimum time for 1, 2, 3, or 4 stars, and no more than 100 seconds out for 5 stars. And then for show jumping, no more than 16 penalties at obstacles. A and B are the dressage tests. I can't figure out if 45 is good or bad. Like, I don't know. I'm somewhere where like I can argue it both ways, that I can see wanting it higher so that you're not putting too much emphasis on dressage being like the main focus, or that you have to get too good of a score in dressage. But I also feel like there was a time when a 45 was a normal score in eventing, and to get a 30 was, wow, I've done so good. I've gotten a 30. I cannot believe it. And now, getting 20s seems to be the average, or like 30s seems to be the average.
Yeah, 20s I would still say is like exceptional wow, but it's now it's like lower 20s is exceptional, high 20s is still wow, but not as like, oh my God.
Right, which is, I think that's just a reflection of the new horses and sort of the new emphasis on dressage. And I know there's been some changes to scoring that have put additional emphasis on dressage. So I get it. I think 45 is fair. Like, I think that shows probably that, like, this rider has a good understanding of how to ride their horse and is riding nicely without putting too much emphasis on dressage.
Like, at 45, I feel you have a lot of leeway in it.
Yeah, I feel like this could be an average ride, but also, like, a ride with some great moments and some not so great moments. Like, it could be either. And then for cross country, activating one frangible device I think is totally fair. I don't know what, like, so these standards, I believe, how they were created is by looking at what the average is, what an average group of riders is doing at these levels, what's typical, and going from there. I know these are currently being reevaluated right now to decide if these are adequate or if they need to be changed. Does this adequately reflect what we're seeing for the average competitor, or is this not enough?
It's also done based on risk assessment. And so I know now, especially with USEA, if you log on to your account, you can see, if you were to click on prelim, a certain color next to it for your name. And that tells you if you are a high risk or a low risk. If you're green, you're good to go for the next level. If you're, I think it's like yellow, it's questionable whether you'll have falls, refusals, something of that nature. And so I'm assuming what they've done is they've just kind of compiled various data and seen, what a rider had before they moved up and what their risk was, how they were able to do at the next level up.
Yes. So yes, I know that that is being considered and looked at. So I think for the cross country, the requirements, 75 seconds seems like a long time, but the way optimum time is designed is that only a couple people should be getting at optimum time or under, and the rest of the riders are supposed to not be able to hit optimum time. So I like 75 seconds and 100 seconds seems like a long time.
Because 75 seconds is only a minute 15. So I would say someone that is, a minute on or a minute over the optimum time, they might have just taken their time elsewhere. They might have slowed down on a course versus someone that came way under optimum time. That's someone I worry about more.
Right, and I think that's the idea, is that we want to give people the leeway to slow down on course, to think about what they're doing, to feel that they can take their time and that they don't have to hustle through and race and make bad decisions on course. So that makes sense to me. The one I actually struggle with a little bit more is jumping, and that you can get 4 rails. I don't know, that seems like a lot in stadium, 4 rails.
I had 4 rails at a show once, and that was an obscene number. So I cannot imagine taking 4 rails and then being like, yes, I am ready for the next step. All right, what else do you have for the MERS, the minimum eligibility requirements?
So that's all I have for just talking about what the FEI requirements are for them. I do know that they're, again, being reevaluated at this time. That's what's been... They convened a group not that long ago headed by Miss Law herself. So I know she's in charge of looking into that. I
did have one thing with the mandatory requirements. It's not on riders. This is actually, I was very interested to find it. It was on the new CCI 5 stars, and it requires that of the facility or those putting on the event. Because when they changed the rules over in January 2019, they gave until 2020, I'm assuming based on this year, that's been extended until 2021, for the previous Rolex, Badminton, and Burley to get their events up to the 5-star new kind of requirements. It gave them that amount of time to get up and be reevaluated and reestablish that they are a 5-star. And so what it requires is there's actually a mandatory minimum prize money of 150 euros or $177,712. There is mandatory that there's a closed circuit television run for the event. It's also required that they have a minimum amount of starters of 30, and you can only have a maximum number of entries at 75. I don't know if that counts, like if one rider has 2 horses. I don't know if they're limited, that takes up one of the 75 slots, or if one rider counts as just one and they can have multiple rides. I'm not sure on that one.
Interesting. I didn't know it was mandatory to offer that much prize money.
I didn't either, but it kind of makes sense to keep themselves competitive and offering a reward to their riders, and maybe it might make other people that aren't necessarily watching horse events to key in to see who wins the prize money. I don't know.
I mean, I think it's more to encourage the best competition is really what it is. They want to make sure that they're having the best show up at these events, and the way to do that is to offer them a lot of prize money so that they can sustain, right? I mean, that's probably pays for a lot of their training and their barns and their horses and their travel.
Yeah.
If they're able to win prize money.
No, it's not. And I know sometimes when riders, they are going to these bigger competitions and events, especially if they're on a team, sometimes they're having to give up some of their income to compete and to be able to do these things and to focus on that 1 or 2 horses to push through to a 5-star event. And so I'm assuming the prize money is a nice little reward.
Well, and you also, you're not teaching that weekend, or maybe you are. You're probably teaching that weekend, but I think, you're probably not coaching. Yeah, you're not able to teach. You're not able to coach. So you are like losing out on your normal income essentially for that weekend, though. Getting recognized for being at those shows also is like a good resume builder for future earning.
All right, do you want to get into why these changes have come about? What is pushing them? Who is controlling them?
Yes. So let's discuss this, because this change bugs a lot of people and maybe others not so much. So I found the summary notes for the Future of Eventing from 2015. So this is FEI Sports Forum. And I just kind of wanted to read a few quotes from it, because this is a discussion that's been going on for a while, is how do we make eventing more palatable for the Olympics? So these changes are all being prodded by the International Olympic Committee, wanting a sport that sort of better fits their values.
It's hard. This is a hard one to get into.
Yeah, I guess we could say it right now. The truth of the matter is they want something that looks good on TV and that they can sell commercials for. Eventing does not look good on TV. The average person does not want to watch eventing on TV, whether it's dressage, cross country, or stadium. It's hard to film. It's hard to understand. And other normal people are not wanting to watch this. And now that the Olympics has their own TV channel, they can get a lot more ad revenue with sports people want to watch. That's the truth.
Yeah, and on top of that, cross country especially requires a bit of additional space that sometimes the Olympic venues are not wanting to go out and obtain because that costs more money. And in the end, it comes down to money, kids. That's what matters.
Yes. So the IOC are determined to shape the Olympic movement to be fit to speak to a new generation of fans and athletes. So these are some of the things that they wanted to do with eventing. So following are the main objectives identified by the FEI for the 3 Olympic equestrian disciplines. So they want to ensure that the core values of each discipline are respected. Love that. Ensure the welfare of the horse remains paramount. Great. Ensure the highest level of competition while maximizing the number of nations participating. Sounds great. Ensures a substantial separation of competition and classification so people can understand the difference between team and an individual. That's how that is operating, is getting work is a little bit different. You could compete, I think, as both previously, and now you can only compete as one or the other, which has some impacts. And then ensure the competitions to be best sport entertainment, attractive, modern, TV, and spectator friendly. And that's what we're running into issues with, is that best sport entertainment. Why?
Yeah, and we could also take it all the way back to like the very beginning stages. We had the very first event was in, I think it was 1912, and kind of how they ran it was very different than what we know as today. And the very first day they did endurance, and then day 2 they did steeplechase. Then they had a day of rest, and then day 4 they did show jumping, and day 5 they had dressage. And it wasn't until the 1924 Olympic Games that they actually switched the order to what we kind of know it as today, which was dressage, the endurance, cross country, rows and track, and then show jumping. And then it wasn't until another push from the Olympic Committee in 2004 that followed the removal of rows and track to make it cost less and take up less room and be more appealing to the Olympic Committee. And now, once again, as like a result of the 2016 Olympics, we have another push from the Olympic Committee to make it more appealing to them and to keep ourselves in the Olympics.
And I think, right now, I definitely see that we're at a point where the influence from the Olympic Committee may be pushing our sport in a way that is away from our values and away from what this sport truly is. But I do want to say, I think the Olympics trying to compete on that scale has definitely had some really good influence in this sport for many, many years. I do think, we look back at old videos of the Olympics in like the 40s and you're shocked at what the water complex looked like and how things are being ridden. There's some definitely shocking things that occurred, and, having the endurance phase the way it was with galloping at the end, like there was a lot going on that we have changed and adjusted to. So I don't want to totally discredit the influence from the Olympic Committee, because I do think we've had a lot of good changes to the sport because of that. I think now the push then was not about the TV. It wasn't about getting sponsorships, because that is not a secret. Like this isn't like some big, secret that this is all about TV viewership, because FEI is very open about it. The thinking process must also be very mindful of the needs of TV, spectators, sponsors, and extended media interests. They're not hiding why these changes are coming. It's frustrating. And they also are looking at the future of indoor eventing. Is that what we're going to see replacing it? They also want to change the name. And that's like one of the things that was discussed in 2015. I don't know where that went to, but these names are really silly.
What were they?
Equestrian Triathlon, Equestrathon, and Tri-Equathon. Those were some of their ideas.
I'd also like to say, though, that the loss of roads and tracks, while was pushed by the Olympic Committee at the time, I think we would have lost somewhere along the way anyways, just because it's really hard to keep that amount of land and what is needed to do that.
Right. And I think, the loss of roads and tracks, though, the loss of the endurance phase saw a huge change. That's where dressage became much more important. And we saw a lot more warm bloods coming into the sport to get better dressage scores, because they didn't need the thoroughbreds for the endurance as much. Even though thoroughbreds are still king of the sport, the horses that are doing really well do still have a lot of thoroughbred in their bloodlines. But it was definitely a big change.
It makes me sad, though, to think of cross-country potentially being reduced all the way down to just indoor cross-country. Don't get me wrong. I know indoor cross-country has a lot of bonuses and it's a lot of fun and people enjoy it. It's just, I would miss the outdoor aspect of it. I would miss like the actual cross-country, running across the country.
Right, but it's the only way that the sport is going to be viewer-friendly. Spectators love Kentucky Derby and they love rodeo.
Yeah.
Rodeo is America's sport. You tell people you're a barrel racer and they totally get what you do. You tell people you're an eventer and they're like, huh? What? It's in the Olympics?
That one little white box? So we ride on that first. And then, those colorful poles? Okay, then we jump those. And there's also some logs out in the open. We jump too.
Yeah, I think trying to make eventing spectator friendly, trying to get it on TV it's not going to happen when you're competing with the Kentucky Derby, which we're not, right? And rodeo, which we're not. So I think that presents a huge challenge. And the thing with the Olympics is, if we, for whatever reason, decided eventing didn't want to be an Olympic sport anymore, don't think our shoes would go like unfilled. Reiners are chomping at the bit for our position. Reiners want to be in the Olympics. I think reining would be a much more spectator friendly sport. Everyone does the same pattern. It's a very simple pattern. It's a simple to watch pattern. I'm not saying it's simple to ride, but it's pretty, it's glitzy, and it's really simple, and it's all contained in one space. I think that's what we're competing with right now is reiners.
Do you think it's worth it to eventing to keep changing the sport and to keep changing things to make it more, viewer friendly? Do you think it's worth it to keep that spot? Because it is good for eventing as a whole to keep people aware of us and potential sponsorships. It's hard already losing some of the old venues that we've had. On top of that, losing Rolex as a sponsor for the Kentucky 3-day event. Isn't the World Equestrian Games in question now too?
Well, yeah, right. We're struggling to find a venue that can host all the sports at one time, so they're now starting to break it apart. I can argue this one either way, whether we should stay, whether we should go. Is staying going to change the nature of our sport more? Are we going to be different because of this? Does staying get more eyes on the sport? Is this the way, more countries are now going to be able to compete because we're in the Olympics? So other countries that wouldn't be competing if it was just a World Equestrian Games, are they going to compete because there's an Olympics? Would the World Equestrian Games? Would Pan Am Games, would stuff like that, would those stay, or would those go away now that we don't have the Olympics? You know, what is the push?
And if we were removed from the Olympics or step back from the Olympics, would it delegitimize our sport to more people? We already have a hard enough argument with the average person that horse riding is a sport. Would no longer being partaking in the Olympics, would that delegitimize it to people?
I don't know. And would things like, would we lose sponsors, right?
We're already losing sponsors. There was a big event venue with like a big, I don't remember which one it was. It's really bugging me. It was generally, there was like a nice, beautiful picture of a horse jumping over a giant table with a castle in the background. And that venue is no longer available in Europe. Like they're no longer hosting events. And on top of that, Rolex losing Rolex as a sponsor. That was always been, we know it as Rolex, not the Kentucky 3-day event. So it's not like we're not seeing these effects already happening, and we're still in the Olympics at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of, you know, are we going to lose individual sponsors even at a lower level? Because if you're trying to get your horse to the Olympics, people understand you investing and trying to get your horse to the Olympics. Do people understand you trying to get your horse to WEG? I don't know. And are we encouraging the best riders? Are the best riders at the Olympics, or are they at these other competitions? And with the change of format from teams and individuals being separated, are the best riders going to be riding on the individuals because the team is going to be a 4-star competition and the individuals would be a 5-star competition? So are you seeing a greater split in who's riding for what country and where the top riders are? And I mean, Canada's doing a lot better, but there was a time when Canada really struggled to find Olympic riders. They have rebuilt and they now have a good pool of riders to choose from, but there was a time not that long ago when even Canada didn't have members to send, or, you know, just being a Canadian resident would basically guarantee you on the team.
It's hard. It hurts because, like, this is our sport. This is what we love to do. It's hard to explain to outsiders and make them understand what's just so special about it.
I mean, I would, if we left the Olympics, I would hope and pray that things like the World Equestrian Games stayed, because that is, I think the world, like, those events are so much more, and there's so much more community sport or community support around them. And I understand that competing at the Olympics and the nationalism that is felt is unexplainable. How people when you're at the Olympics, just that energy and how people just get so wrapped up and involved in supporting their country, that's not comparable. But is that enough to sustain eventing, or are things like the World Games better to sustain eventing because you have more of a community draw and support? I just don't know.
And isn't the Olympics, aren't they trying to add new sports in? And what they're trying to add in wouldn't make sense for eventing to stay?
So the new sports that were added for 2020, as well as some new disciplines, include surfing, sport climbing, skateboarding, baseball, softball, karate, as well as 3-on-3 basketball, archery mixed team, event triathlon and mixed relay, judo mixed team, and some others. Does that sound like an organization that has room for eventing?
No, it doesn't.
Those are trying to be more urban. Those are urban sports for a younger audience. I do not think eventing is an urban sport for young audiences.
I don't think so either.
I'm sorry. Like, it's just not. But if you're trying to capitalize on the popularity of some of these sports, I could watch surfing on TV and understand what was happening. And so could anyone else. And I just think eventing just does not fit into the vision of what the Olympic Games has. The program for Tokyo 2020 is now more youthful, urban, and gender balanced. I don't see eventing fitting in that. Gender balanced, sure. Like, we definitely check that box. But youthful and urban? I think we check that box. And if that's the way the Olympics want to go, I don't know how we...
Yeah, how do we compete with the others? You know, the new sports they're bringing.
Right?
In.
We start eventing. We start eventing like on a skateboarding like park. That's the new cross country, running down the street. Like, I just don't.
Yeah, exactly. It's confusing. I don't know where we're supposed to go from here. And we can get as upset with the FEI all we want for changing some of these things to appeal to the Olympic Committee and make our sport more spectator friendly, easier to understand. But I don't know what our other options are.
Yeah, I mean, if that pressure is being put on us and they want to stay in the Olympics, then we have to make these changes. And it makes me wonder if we're going to see, we kind of have like a subgroup of eventers that do indoor eventing, and that's sort of it becoming its own thing. We have the same happening in the dressage world, where you have subgroups being created, trying to start their own organizations and their own competition circuit because they don't feel they fit in the sport as it is currently. Is that what we're going to see with eventing? But now it's going to be those of us who want to stay with this format, maybe want more of a long format, and we're going to see eventing now being an indoor sport. Is that what the change is going to be?
So what I'm frustrated by with the changes that we're seeing in eventing is that these pushes to make it more Olympic friendly, while it is determining how it's being run on the Olympic scale, you see this being trickled down throughout the whole eventing community, and that people at the lower levels are feeling the changes. Someone trying to compete at the 1-star are feeling these changes. And so I'm wondering, if they were to change over to eventing indoors, how many outdoor, would there just be two different worlds of eventing, do you think? Do you think you have one where you're trying to achieve the Olympics and go to the Olympics and that's strictly like indoor eventing? Or do you think, I don't know, there's just so many options that there.
Yeah, I don't know. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is that the pushes from the Olympic Committee are not just the format of our sport. This is also where the frangible pin technology is coming from, because watching riders potentially die on live television is not very appealing. And so that's why we're seeing a lot of these safety changes coming from, is to make this sport safer for television viewing. And I know that's really cynical and really critical of what's happening. I absolutely do think this sport should be as safe as possible. I don't think frangible pins should be the only thing we rely on to make the sport safer. And I know that's where the MERS are coming from. Those minimum eligibility requirements are an attempt to not just rely on frangible pins to make the sport safer. But that's a push because they want to make sure what's being broadcast on live television is safe, and family friendly.
Well, I guess unless you have anything else to add, we can just wrap it up from here.
Yeah, we're kind of ending on a downer, a bit of a sad note, but it's definitely something to think about.
It's hard because we don't have a final answer to this question, because it's still in the works. This is something we're seeing play out before our eyes right now, that over the next couple of years, we might see some crazy changes. We might see nothing happen. It's something that's still occurring, and so we can't just put it in a box, wrap it up with a nice shiny bow, and say, well, here's the answer, here's what happened, because it hasn't happened yet.
The one thing I come back to if we talk about wanting to leave, I hope that if we left, it would make the sport better. I mean, you think about Olympic baseball, Olympic basketball. Those are not that is not the top of the sport, right? Olympic basketball is kind of a joke, right? Everyone knows U.S. pro basketball is the top of the sport, and a lot of those players aren't going to the Olympics, and a lot of those that are going to the Olympics you're not the best at the sport. So I'm not criticizing basketball at all, but I'm saying, basketball has a great format and a great audience outside of the Olympics, and that maybe there's hope that the same could happen for eventing.
I think there's a lot of sports outside the Olympics that the Olympics is not the pinnacle of them. I mean, hockey, they have the Stanley Cup that everyone tunes in to watch. They don't necessarily always tune in to watch the hockey Olympics.
Right. So, and the same for soccer. There's other sports, and things like rugby and cricket are not Olympic sports, but they have that huge community behind them where the countries love that sport, and that's a culture where eventing isn't part of our culture. Rodeo is part of our culture. So I don't know what would happen.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out, because it's still happening every day. Thank you guys so much for sticking with us through this episode, hanging in here until the very end if you did. If you want to follow us on Instagram, you can check us out at mudstudsskullcaps. If you have topics you want to discuss or share thoughts or opinions with us, go ahead and email us at mudstudsskullcaps@gmail.com.
And if you are so inclined, go ahead and leave us a review. Remember, those reviews are so other people know what we're talking about and know if we're worth listening to. So go ahead and share reviews, share your thoughts, and subscribe if you're following us on Apple iTunes. That means the world to us.
All right, guys, remember, stay safe, stay classy, and stay in the saddle. Bye.
Bye.